Hello, everyone. I'm Haley from Trapology Boston, an escape room and immersive entertainment company based in downtown Boston. Today, I am joined by Laia and Isabel from Laia Cabrera and Company. Hello, you two. Thank you for joining me.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. So just to get started, could you two tell me a little bit about yourselves?
Yes. My name is Laia Cabrera and Isabel Duverger. I'm a filmmaker and video artist working in immersive content experiences and visual storytelling. And in the last kind of 12 years, we created a company together because we wanted to kind of create like projects that they were really interdisciplinary and they were like mixing a lot of disciplines. And that was the way to go, to be able to have a solid team that would be able to envision those projects that in general they try to mix a filmic approach of view, but also with technology and kind of new kind of following the new dramaturgical elements for new narrativity and in immersive projects. And
I'm Isabelle Duverger. I'm French. I am a visual artist and a video artist, and I work a lot with projection mapping and interactivity, and I've been working with Laia for a very long time now.
So your company obviously explores a lot of different avenues within interactive art and technology. Could you maybe give, a very broad description of your company and maybe something a little more simple, like how would you describe it to grandparents?
Yeah, that's a very... we're basically like creating, we have a deep fascination with the enormous potential that technology has to be able to evolve in new forms of storytelling. And basically our work combines different disciplines, from traditional experimental filmmaking to video mapping techniques and immersiveness and interactivity, to be able to focus more in how do we want to tell that story, and then sort of being able to merge all these disciplines and find the right form to be able to do it. We're mainly interested in creating, like, to make the audience active participators. I mean, being more actors than passive spectators. Therefore, our work has evolved mostly in creating that dialogue and offering also an experience, meaning personally, and Isabel is going to tell you more about all her, sort of skills and everything. But personally, my background was in filmmaking and video art. And there was a moment that I felt that I wanted to exit the screen, the traditional sort of structure. And that was the beginning of a long journey to be able to go outside of that and being interested in architectural surfaces, in the scenographic and dramaturgical aspects. When you actually present, you want to tell your story, having into account the space that you're in, how is going to navigate that narrativity when you're not following the traditional storytelling, then our work and our pieces, which have like a wide range of forms, they can be translated in a video installation, an immersive video installation with interactivity. They can be like a huge video projection in a building. They can be like a virtual scenery for like a theater play or a multimedia show. Always sort of trying to bring the filmic element to but combining it with other disciplines.
Okay, I think she said it all, but in regards to how to explain to grandparents, for instance, it is a little tricky. I think both our families took forever to actually really understand and encompass what we do. And I mean, like, as a filmmaker, video artist, initially, and I'm a visual artist, and I was working with photography and of course painting, drawings, and incorporating it into mixed media. And when I started working with Laia, because Laia was a bit ahead of me in that field, it was very complicated to explain that actually you can converge all these elements and blend them into one art form, which would be as complex as all the art forms that are encompassed. And actually, one of the best way to explain them was to show them, because otherwise it was very complex to understand.
Yeah.
Well, by now they understand and they are big fans, but it's true that at the beginning they were kind of, the more challenging was how to explain it to others.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you work with, I see it also like when you do a film. I mean, it's more understand, and we understand right now that it encompasses a lot of departments and it has a lot of a very holistic approach. But when you work in the art kind of world and also in the video installation work, it had a momentum, at specific time. But then afterwards, I don't know, it seems that there was this tendency that each discipline wanted to be in their own box. It was even difficult to find venues or festivals or to be able to show your work because you were not fitting anywhere. It was being, like kind of an outsider, even though what you were trying to achieve is like to create this cross, genre, bending these, kind of like more rigid kind of forms and not using, for example, a cinematic approach as a subordinate, the other way around. It's like kind of how can all these things can collaborate and create something new. That's why meeting each other was fantastic because when I met Isabel, I saw, all her talent in illustration and animation, everything. And there was this will to incorporate that and make it sort of like, that would flow very naturally.
Mm-hmm. So could you maybe talk a little bit more about how you two met and, started working together?
Well, as I said before, I started sort of like going out of the screen, sort of trying to break the rules of like what was expecting from like someone that wanted to do film. I had a fascination also with, let's say, Tarkovsky, Mayada, and Buñuel surrealism, trying to find more poetic forms to express. And then I had a gig at the time with a friend of mine, with a composer, and we were kind of collaborating at the time, sort of creating music with live visuals. And then I met Isabel and I saw her work and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. And I asked her at one of these gigs, can you come and can you live draw? Which she looked at me kind of saying, where are you? That was at the BAP, which in New York is kind of like a big venue. And that was the beginning of a nonstop collaboration. And then, I don't know, I think that she was afraid at the time, but right now she's like at the top of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think from there, like, we started working together, creating video art pieces, and then creating projection mapping on facades of buildings. And we were like always triggered by how to make it interactive for an audience, more responsive kind of experience. And we started working with conductive paint and interactive rooms that would be. So we use different technology over time to actually do interactivity. And now we are doing motion tracking kind of. Actually, the first motion tracking installation was public art, and it was very kind of responsive to certain movements and activating specific elements in the video, in the visuals. And now we are affecting sound and videos as well. So.
So you obviously touch on a lot of different areas within interactive media. Have you always had, this vision of what you're going to do with your company, or has it evolved over time just as new technology comes out or as your interests change?
Yeah, definitely has changed. I think curiosity has been one of the main driven forces. And always, again, I was saying before, is because every time that we think about maybe a theme or something that we want to explore, it's like, okay, what would be the right format? What would be the right shape? And that's kind of like a stimulus, a driving force to push boundaries and always being kind of always very aware and receptive, because time changes, audience changes. We cannot tell the same stories that we were telling before. I don't think in the same way. That curiosity, and also because we had, we were lucky enough to have all these collaborative also projects with people in other, in the theater world, in the visual arts, in the art world, it's very nurturing too, because you see things that you want to explore, things that, how about if we do this, then definitely has evolved. Technology has played an important role. We think about technology almost like a magician. That would be kind of inventors, magicians, where you want the technology to serve the story or serve the idea that you want to do and make it as invisible as possible. That it doesn't become...
Well, it becomes seamless for the user, so they don't have to use technology to actually interact with the piece. they use only their own body.
Well, exactly, but also whatever technology, because technology starts with creating the image as how you map it in the space and how you design interactivity. It's this idea to make it really magical, not to kind of to go back to this simplicity or idea that the virtual and the real kind of also.
And I think that that relationship that we have with technology is not so much like, oh, there's this new tool, how can we use it to do a new piece? It's, oh, we really want to do that thing, how can we do it with the technology that has hand? And usually the technology is not at hand, so we have to kind of work around the technology also to make things happen.
So what would you say is your philosophy for innovative design? You know, is it just, you know, evoking these emotions or always trying to push boundaries? You know, what would you say is your philosophy?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think the philosophy is that we're interested in exploring certain themes, and identity has been like a long, topic for me and research, and I think that we're trying to find the kind of. I think that we are in a moment that the way that had evolved, like at the beginning, was very challenging, and you had to be your own developer of the things that you wanted to do. I think that right now that it seems that we are in a moment where like this dialogue is more fruitful, where we had, for example, a hard time at the beginning when we wanted to find programmers to be able to work in the art world or create more artistic projects, because there was not that much communication with these areas. I think that right now it's a very beautiful moment in that sense to explore these things. And one said, the themes are kind of the main force that it's driving us, kind of like also the experience would be the second one, is that they create new experiences for the audiences and also changing a little bit the art world, because that's another big element. I think we had seen a lot of these kind of new narratives, new languages, new things in many areas, but not that much in the art world. Seems a bit reluctant to that. And I think it's one of the things that is important, because you can work with more conceptual ideas, you have maybe more freedom in the creative process, you don't have to be so subordinated, to the idea of a client, and I think that that's something that it's in the back of our head.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, changing the art world. Is there anything that is off limits to you, anything that you just don't want to touch or go down that avenue, or is it free for all? If you can do it, you will?
Well, maybe you want to explain. I mean, I would like, how can I say? For us has been, for example, the piece that we did in the Flutter Experience Gallery, which is the first immersive interactive gallery that opened in LA, and they asked us to do a piece. We love the idea that they trusted us with something, because when we started doing these things, there was not that much out there to be able to say, what is it? How is that gonna play? How does it work? I mean, does it run for the whole day? Is like a specific time? I mean, it was very uplifting to have the freedom, and they gave us total freedom to explore not only the concept, the way to do it, and everything. That for example has been very thrilling.
Well, I would say that, sometimes we work with grants, and so sometimes we apply to themes that are actually not necessarily what is the focus of what our trajectory has been. But I think that it's always interesting to have this kind of challenging thinking in terms of like, okay, this thing is really interesting, so maybe there's something there that we can explore. I don't know if there's any boundary, I guess ethical boundaries. Outside of that, I think the themes are always a way to explore and progress and evolve.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know, for example, in one piece that we presented at the Spring Breakout Show, exactly, which was part of the Armory Arts Week, that there was a piece that, for example, it had different narratives, and it was like a whole bedroom of a kid, sort of like leading with the idea of the innocence, and And then we wanted to reflect in the sort of 21st century surveillance, no? And we were using that idea of the elf, no? That kind of this theater that came out as an idea. I mean, we use it. I mean, it was a piece that combined, you know, like a more ludic aspect, but it had the concept and a theme behind that we thought it was relevant.
Because the main theme of the exhibition was a stranger comes to town. So whichever interpretation you would make of it.
But anyway, we wanted to reflect this idea that, you know, that for example, how sometimes in our early childhood, like there are like things or like narratives that we create that can sort of maybe may force you to reflect in this idea how we're educating also kids, like being surveilled, being report, you know, because that kind of reports everything that is being done. I don't know. I mean, that kind of having these layers where you can combine maybe like a experiential and ludic sort of relationship with the piece, but it has some depth and some conceptualization behind.
Amazing. So, you know, obviously you said that sometimes there are themes that you're given to work with based on grants, but when you know, are just looking for a new piece and inspiration, how much do you draw from your past, you know, not just technical skills, but personal experiences in your history? How do you use that to inspire your pieces?
Always. I think that the best way that you can do when you do a piece is to talk or try to talk about something that in a way you had some experience or some knowledge about it. Again, I was insisting, I mean, things about memory, identity, notions of consciousness, kind of like the more oniric and surreal sort of journeys, and kind of this exploration about the multiple I, you know, like although these things have been kind of like a constant exploration in the work. And right now we're very fascinated also with, we have a project that we're working. One is in relationship that it's called About Time, and it's about our perception of time and how that relates to, you know, like in a subjective level, and also like, you know, trying to, we're working also creating like a network of collaborators that goes from researchers and scientists, you know, that exploring the mind, the performers and artists, kind of creating this whole journey that maybe it's going to take 1 or 2 years of like research, you know, that because we want to incorporate all these kind of elements of knowledge and then transform it into a piece that people can go and have, you know, an experience of that without being either didactic or either scientific. But anyway, time has been one of our main focus, and that related also to mapping the mind and mapping the brain, kind of like using that almost like a little kind of excuse to navigate for all the complexity of who we are or how are our relationships. I mean that, for example, those are things that are always like kind of there, you know, like as a path to keep exploring.
And it's interesting because actually one of the things that we have been collaborating for a long time, but we have two very different minds. And she's a filmmaker and she's a storyteller in some ways, and her brain is more in a way time kind of related and abstract, and I am more into the spatial kind of aspects of things. I see more the momentum, the details of a certain moment in time. And so working together has been like sometimes it's very challenging and everything, but it actually allows us to grow from each other and create something that is more complete. But I forgot what I wanted to say. But
no, that's I mean, it always helps because we are always at the core of any project that we start, and eventually in each project we have other collaborators, kind of our own little family, you know, where like we like to work and to accomplish, you know, sometimes the complexity that the project requires, not only technically but also in the form, because, you know, like some of the times, you know, like I personally love to work also with dance and performatic aspects, and then you need also the right collaborators that understand the language and they're willing, you know, to embark in something that it's not maybe the most, you know, in a traditional form, and have that willingness and that freedom to want to do it now.
So that, I mean, I finally found back what I wanted to say. Like in some ways that it has been part of Laya's past and how she has been growing from that. And in the sense that because my brain has much been about like spatial and light and like throughout my earlier years, I have been working with photographers that made me actually not think about necessarily the subject, but the light on it, which actually now that we are doing projection, light is everything. So it has been definitely nurturing this part of the what we're doing now. And the other thing is I have had a teacher in high school that made me see way outside the box and introduced me, for instance, to the work of Louise Bourgeois and her rooms. And she constructed rooms at the time that no one would conceive sculpture as a space for people to get into and be surrounded by. And that has definitely had an influence on our immersive artwork.
So. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, talking about how your past, influences your work and your backgrounds, have there been any just really unexpected places that you found inspiration for any of your pieces, or just any ideas you're like, you know what, that could be cool?
Train rails for me are always an inspiration, because we did a piece that was about memory, choice, and desire. Sorry, I forgot. And that's kind of something that always comes to my mind, because it's about making choices, and kind of the cross, the train rails is kind of like a beautiful metaphor. It's always in our work, we always try to find, let's say, images that don't exist. We are, as a filmmakers, we shoot everything and we try to record and have, but we work also with digital elements, but also very organic as well. We have, our own techniques to create like things that are very kind of crafted or create in the process of filming. Then of course a lot of composites, but it's always like the idea to create images that they appear real, but they're impossible. I love the idea of impossibility of an image, and kind of see all the layers underneath, and only like one single composition would tell you would tell you a story as well, Then in that sense, that also the lucid dreaming is a very beautiful moment. And the other one, it's like the do nothing. It's the moment that you sit at the end of the day and almost you get paralyzed, like become almost a sculpture. And the body is not working and it's only the mind. And you're kind of like, puzzling things in your mind. I mean, it can be anywhere, it can be.
Yeah. I mean, I find doing dishwashing very inspiring, because it's almost like you have an activity at hand that you know how to do, so you don't have to think about it, and therefore your mind can wander. And so, among other
but it's a lot about wandering. I mean, in order to, I don't know, I suppose that maybe you can relate to that, but in a creative process is about allowing yourself to wander. You have to wonder. You have to allow yourself to make connections that they didn't exist before, and sort of then any situation that helps that it kind of liberates you of the constraints of the being rational.
So when you find an idea when you're dishwashing or just sitting at the end of the day, how long do you sit with it yourself to develop? Like, do you go to the other immediately, be like, hey, I have this idea? What's that process like of that initial nugget of an idea to actually working on it and presenting it?
That's an excellent question. I don't think there is a rule. I mean, it's not always the same. Sometimes it's the form, thinking about, wow, how about if we create this kind of environment that is 360, you're immersed in it, and then from that kind of like first sort of sketch of like kind of visual representation, then you start filling out with the idea, with the content, with the storytelling, or like a narrative. Sometimes it's the other way around. It's like, well, I really, for example, the piece about time, we really wanted to talk about time. I wanted to make it relevant, almost like kind of Leonardo da Vinci. Can we encapsulate all the notions that we know about time in today's society, in what we know so far, and link it to our consciousness about, how, because everything is about, I mean, as Einstein said, time doesn't exist. I mean, it's an illusion. Then how can we combine that and mix it? And that, for example, started, and then we decided to bring some of the collaborators that we wanted to work. For example, Catherine Correa has been like a dance actress, performing choreographer, which we tend to work, repeatedly because he also has this very creative mind. And then bring scientists that they would speak to us, or that we can talk a lot of reading. I mean, in that case, for example, the sort of research and pre-preparation in order to decide how it's going to be the final shape and form had been more relevant. In other cases, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And sometimes
definitely there's a brainstorm that happens, whether it's with between the two of us or bringing more participant collaborators. Sometimes it's musicians, sometimes it's actually like interactive designers that have like an understanding of how can that be done in actual, like, is it feasible, is it doable, and how can we work around technology to be able to make it. I think another part of the process is, once we've been talking about it, because once again I'm very visual. I tend to create a lot of storyboards, like images, and we gather all imagery that inspires us, and we start building also from a visual standpoint. I don't know.
Yeah, in that sense, a little bit kind of like that you would do a film. The only thing is that it translates, but most of the time it can be either like sort of research or storyboarding. We tend to storyboard a little bit, in order. Plus, I wanted to say that in the evolution also of our work, right now that we work more in immersive, interactive, infinity room spaces, also we're very fascinated by the new narratives that the escape rooms are offering too, because that's, I think, it's very interesting to take it and then transform it into an installation, because there is a lot there, to explore, also in the video game world too. I mean, even though it's not our main, but there is something that you want to rescue there, because I think it's forthcoming. I mean, there is a lot there to learn and to implement. Anyway, with that said, we're just discovering right now that we also have to change our way of working. Because before, for example, in order to do like even video art or video installations in a more traditional way, you were breaking sort of the traditional structures of the linear kind of storytelling. I mean, you can break it, but it's almost that you started realizing that there is no beginning, no end, no direction, no duration. And right now with immersive interactive installations,
but it still has a timeline.
Yeah.
So
it still has a timeline. Right now with these pieces, it's even going beyond that. For example, for the last 2 or 3 pieces, we created maybe 12 narratives for one single piece in order to make it interactive, meaning that the writing or even the thinking or the conception of the piece has totally changed in the way you work, because you build things kind of allowing to go to many places. Then it's a shift in your not only in your mind, in your way of working, but also into the methodology and the process. We're getting right now it seems kind of very clear, and we're much faster in coming with how we're gonna do that piece. But I remember at the beginning that we had to sort of force ourselves.
Yeah, it was almost like a shift of the brain from going from point A to point B, to have the idea of starting at point A and then allowing the audience to choose whatever B, C, D, and that was the shift in the brain to allow for possibilities to happen.
And not only the choice, which is there, but also that that you have to create like a more kind of a wireframe from it, and which encompasses the changes or like what the direction that can go. Not that much in a linear structure that you can have it in your editing room and then it comes up and you have to decide how it ends and how it goes, and changing sort of the editing of it.
Wow. I mean, you've clearly done some really, really innovative work, which shows, just looking through your reel. Are there any ideas that you have floating around right now for the future, or are there any dream projects you just want to sink your hands into? Anything going on right now?
Well, we have a new piece that we're working. It's called Dreamscape, and it plays.
But we cannot say anything about it.
But it's anyway, exactly. But anyway, hopefully, come up soon. And anyway, it has the narratives and explores a little bit this idea. One of the things that the dreams that we're still working is we would like to create a project that we would make any space kind of a cathedral of time, and kind of this kind of making almost like a visual opera, like would have a lot of things, and the whole space would be, I'm saying cathedral of time in the sense because we imagine all the space with these pendulums and kind of entering almost like in an hypnotic kind of journey where we would be able to take you to the storyline that we want to take you on, but make it, really.
And what you mean by
really hypnotical and suggestive.
And what you mean by opera is it would have sets, composition, performers, as well as the audience being part of it, interactivity. We were thinking of a venue like the Park Avenue Armory, something relatively large, which is a beautiful space that can be completely reconstructed, transformed. And another thing is that we've been working a lot in public art, doing a lot of projection mapping, but also bringing, for instance, the Now, which is an interactive public art installation. And that was the thing in Times Square with 200,000 people passing by every day. So that was something that brought, of course, people that were already accustomed to interactivity, video art, and installations of the kind, but also passerbys, people that didn't know anything about it and that got to be acquainted to it. So that is something also about like a large project would be able to have the capacity to bring anyone, like public art kind of.
Also, it was a learning curve as well, because there is a lot to learn also about cognitive behavior and participatory environments and creating a culture for people to navigate installations and interactivity and create sort of like a language and a culture too. Then mostly when you use, but our idea is also that people only use their bodies, there is no device attached or anything. Then still there is a lot in that curve too. One thing is when you go to a place that, like by now, we're fortunate that there is like galleries and spaces, with a wide range of work that what's expected. But that was a very interesting experience because your audience was people that were not used to that they didn't have that culture. There was no expectation. Then how you capture their attention, how. That was very interesting for us also because to do research in that way. What kind of narratives can be relevant today? Can make people really want to discover, curious about.
I'm certainly excited for those future projects. They sound great. What you can say about the one that you're working on right now? Obviously, you can't say too much, but we will all keep a lookout for that. Just to, finish things up, just curious, have you had any, maybe odd or unexpected requests from clients over the years?
Many. Yeah, some that you cannot even say. But I don't know, I think that you wanted to...
I can think of like two projects. I think the first one was actually Flutter Experience that approached us saying like, we saw your work, we want something, we have these rooms, choose one and propose us anything. So that was kind of unexpected in the sense that we had really carte blanche. So that was great. And
because for example, most of the time, you have to convince, like you said, there is always in projects that are really like innovative or new, it's not always easy to, like sometimes it takes a little bit and you have to almost to educate, the venue, the person or whatever. Not that much anymore, but in that case, that was at that moment in time, that was very uplifting. Also, for example, we had to do like a festival that had to take place, and we were commissioned to do a video mapping of the Flatiron. Anyway, we had to do a project that was a huge festival, a literacy festival, and then suddenly, it got cancelled because of the COVID-19. And then from one day to another, we got that call kind of saying like, well, can we transform a festival into a virtual? And then that was kind of like spinning for, I don't know, And suddenly, like then we brainstorm a little bit and we can come out, and then Isabel sat down and she did this amazing illustration that captured all the complexity of something like this that we were able to pull. And then a lot of the people that were involved before, they were able to jump in because they saw there was they saw what that could be. And for us, for example, we were able to incorporate augmented reality, like web art, like we did even like a virtual video mapping. We create a whole, I mean, we saw that virtuality as a new platform to create also artistic projects and even things that are so complicated like this, and creating a virtual portal and being able to develop, this kind of like things. I mean, how can you translate those languages and these necessities to, for example, a virtual environment, make it attractive and artistic and welcoming and engaging. And at the end, it was a success, and it just make us see that whatever idea you have, or even complex, it's I mean, you can always shift it and find the right format, and that's very positive, because in moments in life when you find limitations or like constraints or something, knowing that what counts is the content, it's relevant.
Yeah, in other words, we were, instead of bringing people to the festival, we brought the festival to each and every home. And I think one of the most representative thing that we did was basically a web augmented reality application. So people would not have to download and go through the whole thing. They would just access it online, and that would bring the celebration into their home, literally in their physical home.
Well, because so it was augmented reality, which is, I mean, it's kind of like, I think it's still magical for all of us when you can work with something that it's real and virtual and they combine magically, and it feels that there is no boundary, there is no physical limitation, no, that we're almost in the fifth dimension. Then that still plays a role, and it's always captivating to do something.
Well, really interesting work that you've done. Unfortunately, we are out of time now, but thank you so much for talking to me today. I hope you enjoyed yourself, because I certainly did, and have learned a lot about you and your art. It's been so great. Well, thank you again, and thank you everyone who stopped by to listen, and I hope everyone has a great day.